If you could eliminate data entry for your truckload brokers, how much more business would your top performers win? TIE TMS has an array of tools designed to save you hours a day. Import your entire spreadsheet of shipments. Let TIE create seamless integrations to your customers' internal systems. And if all of your orders come through email, TIE TMS leverages AI to read an incoming email and enter the shipment for you. Visit tie-software.com to learn more about how you can empower your top performing brokers to increase their shipment volume today.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars.
And welcome to Put That Coffee Down, the freight sales show for closers. My name's Kevin Hill, here with Richie off the grid, Daigle, my trusted co-host. How are you doing today, Richie?
Hey, I'm feeling motivated.
That's good. I'm glad you're feeling motivated. Maybe you can motivate me through this show.
That we'll see what we can do together.
I know, right? That's what we're talking about today. Internal and external motivation, especially in sales, is really the most important thing.
It's the fuel that drives us, right? Like, this is what we run off of. This is what keeps us going. And where does it come from? How do we cultivate it?
Yeah, and I go back to Brent Orsuga, who told us here at Put the Coffee Down about a year or so ago that the only two things you control in sales are your activity and your attitude, and you have to have motivation is the key for both of those.
Yeah, and if you're trying to do it without motivation, it's not going to come off authentic. It's going to come off forced. That motivation is what's going to make that action and activity authentic and real and ultimately better.
Yeah. And if you're making cold calls, you got to be motivated. Because if you're not motivated, you're not going to pick up that phone.
Exactly. And you need to know what the purpose is. You need to know what the big picture is. Why are you doing this? What is your drive? What is the thing that is getting you up in the morning and keeping you running?
Yeah. You got to know that. So let's do TIE. TIE is the ultimate domestic 3PL solution for LTL and full truckload freight. TIE TMS gives you a centralized platform for sourcing load coverage by connecting you to load boards, rate intelligence, and capacity tools on a single page. To learn more, visit TIEsoftware.com. That's TIE, TAI-software.com. So Richie, tell me about motivation.
So I think we could maybe segment this conversation in two pieces, right? Like, what's our internal motivations? How do we elicit that, identify those things inside us that get us going? And then the second part, look at, motivating other people, whether, you're a manager or, maybe it's motivating a prospect, but how to elicit those things that drive other people and create motivating environments, if you will, for your teams and so forth. So maybe let's jump into like internal motivation and what that is. Like, what motivates you, Kevin?
What motivates me?
What gets you going?
That's a really good question. Just the challenge. Challenges and obstacles, they motivate me. I have fun with them.
Yeah. Yep. And for me, and this is your typical Richie long-winded answer. So, but buckle your seatbelt a little bit. But
are we delving down to 17th century philosophers?
Maybe.
Okay.
But
all right. Fair warning then.
I think back to when I was playing baseball, and there was always so many examples of, oh, Johnny's such a nice guy. He's such a great, calm, easygoing guy. But when he's on the field, he will take your head off, right? And he will run you over, and he's a dirty player, and all these things. And you have this dichotomy of who somebody is when they're working or competing and who they are when they're not working and competing. And the thing is Johnny doesn't stop being Johnny when he gets on the baseball field. Who he is who he is, good or bad. And if he's mean on the field, he's mean. He's got a mean streak in him. Don't try to cover it up. That's just who he is. And like this whole thing of work versus non-work, you are who you are, right? And you are living, and your values that you are living off the field or outside of work are still values inside of you that are going to come out in your work, and vice versa. So I think it's important to all that to say, it's important to understand what your values are and what are your motivations as a person in work and outside of work to know where those really deep motivators, what is meaningful to me as a person. And once you start getting into that well, I think that's where the long burning hot coals are that can motivate you over a long period of time.
So what is the dichotomy, right? Because you do hear that all the time, especially about athletes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nicest guy off the field, mean on the field, right? Why the personality? Why is the perceived personality change, right?
I think there's a lot of depth there, and you're just looking at actions in different situations, but somebody is who they are, and something might be buried within them, good, bad, or other, that doesn't come out. But that doesn't mean that trait isn't there. And so I think when you start understanding how to mesh those two and understanding the similarities and where the deep sources of meaning are that drive both, now you're starting to get into more at the core of who you are and what Simon Sinek says, what is your why that you are living out in work and life and non-work life and so forth.
That really reminds me, know your why. And what's your why is different for everybody. It takes me back to the movie City Slickers. Have you ever seen that movie, Richie?
I have, it's great.
Jack Palance, right?
Yes, it's
The
fantastic.
purpose of life is this. And Billy Crystal's like, what is this? You got to figure that out, right?
Exactly.
And it's such a great philosophical moment in the movie. It's a very funny moment as well, but it's real, right? My purpose isn't going to be your purpose. It's not going to be the other person's purpose. But if you don't fulfill your purpose or what you really want to do, then you are always going to have an identity crisis almost, right?
Yep, and I think in sales, especially because sales has so many headwinds, right? We're always getting beat up with no's, and there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of, things aren't going the way that I want them to go. And you really need a very strong motivating factor to drive through those headwinds. And I think if you don't have that recognition of what it is that motivates you at your core, then you're left with a lot of superficial short-term motivations that can get you through for a minute before you fall back, and now you're in this big roller coaster.
And one of those, we talked about it maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, is that big picture, the overarching direction, maybe not a specific goal, but where you want to be in the future, right? Then these daily obstacles and challenges and all the no's become completely and utterly unimportant. You don't even think about them. While other people who don't have that vision, I suppose, are always hampered by those obstacles. It's always this huge problem, right? But if you see where you're going, everything else is just minor.
And then it's not just your big picture, but your company's big picture, right? And then there's this great word that I love is alignment. And if you can get your big picture, if it falls in alignment with the purpose and the values and the direction for the company you're working for, then that works, right? The motive, we're all on the same page, so to speak. And now, like you said, that drive, that motivation to push forward, make things happen is natural because there's this alignment that's already happened.
And you see that a lot in businesses and all organizations, right? But certainly in sales, where the salespeople have a vision of what they want to sell, and the business has a vision of what they want to sell. And it doesn't really align, and that's where you get compensation packages that aren't aligned with each other, and there's always this friction. You find that because as a salesperson, your goals or what you think is very doable is not aligned with what the business wants.
Or maybe there is alignment, but it hasn't been verbalized.
Sure.
Right? And it hasn't been brought up to the surface to be recognized. And then there's this blindness of kind of throwing darts in the dark, so to speak, as far as how are we going to motivate people, or how am I going to get motivated, or what is the company really doing? There's all these questions and uncertainty that can also create some doubts and take away from motivation.
Yeah. So we're talking about individual motivation right now. Put that coffee down. What's kind of some of your key takeaways from, we talked about knowing our why or our purpose. What's something else?
Yeah, so I read there's a couple articles that came up. One was on a website that I found, Intellectives, and it was just how top salespeople stay motivated. And I read through all of that, and summarizing all of the points, it brought me back to Greg Maddox, and it's things that kind of build internal confidence, right? Have a plan, right? After you figured out your why, now we got to put it to action, right? If a thought is a thought, it's not doing anything until it turns into actions. So once you figure out that internal why and what that is, let's build a plan. Let's know how to implement that plan, right? How are we going to go about making this plan work, and then execute, right? So and once you have the foundation, supporting your execution, you're much more confident going into those phone calls. You can let the nose flow off your back like water on a duck, right? Because you got your plan, you understand the big picture, you understand the numbers, you know how to implement it, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna execute this thing, and we're gonna see what happens, and you go forward.
You do, and it brings up another point that I've been thinking about, and I always think about, is that nothing worthwhile is very easy. Right? It's not easy at all, right? So, and we have a tendency to come in very optimistic, especially with a sales plan or a strategy, very optimistic. Oh, this is what I have to do to achieve this, and then, the first prospect customer you talk to, you get slapped in the face, right? It happens every time, right? And then you have to rethink it. So, just naturally knowing that. Or maybe not naturally knowing it, but knowing it after many times of it happening, and just adjusting for that, adjusting your expectations for it. Sometimes those first few obstacles that you hit, you're looking for them, and then you can really stay motivated if you're looking for those obstacles, because they're going to come. You're not going to make the income you want in sales without a lot of challenges, obstacles, things you don't even expect. It's how you roll with those punches. You have to be adaptable, and take the Greg Maddox approach and sprinkle it with the Adam Grant constantly be thinking again. Like have your plan and know how to implement it, but revisit that plan frequently and take what you're learning and start adjusting and adapting it. And that reminds me of something else that he said. Maddox told me once, he said, I get worried when I don't know what's wrong with my mechanics, because that's a much bigger problem than having something wrong with my mechanics, because something's always wrong, right? So there's always this constant growth and getting better, but you got to have something deep motivating that path and motivating that journey. And I think when you have that why and that big picture nailed down, all these things are going to fall in line a lot easier. So I was talking to Michael Vincent. We did FreightWaves Now this morning. We were talking in one of the breaks about what we're doing today on Put That Coffee Down. He had a really good insight on that. And it goes back to kind of like Greg Maddox. Greg Maddox never had a mic drop moment. You might think he did a few times, right? But he never thought he did. And in sales, you never have that mic drop moment where it's like, okay, I'm done. You never arrive. You never arrive. It's like, the sales is like, what person ever said, I've achieved healthy. I'm there, I'm healthy, I can quit the diet, I can quit the workout, I can quit the lifestyle, the yoga, whatever it is, because I've crossed the healthy line. I'm good, I can check that box, give me a donut. I know, right? Life is all about, what have you done for me lately? So when people complain that, what have you done, it's all, Richie, this job is all, what have you done for me lately? Well, that's life. It is. That's life, You're never going to escape that. It is always about what you've done right now and what you're going to do in the future. Yep. And so you can look at past performance as probabilities for what you feel someone's capable of, right? But yeah, you have to always be moving forward, and there's that short memory of whatever previous successes or failures are there. Hopefully you're being judged by what you learned out of all of that and not what you did or did not do. Life is easier when you learn from your mistakes. It is. It is. So this is a great article that we've been referencing right here from Intellective Solutions, How Top Salespeople Stay Motivated.
Yeah, good article.
So is that internal? Have we been talking about internal motivation or external? I guess internal motivation, right?
For me, I think the way I was framing that is internal. I think if you don't know what your why is, you don't know what that deep thing is that motivates you, why you work, why you do what you do, why you are the person you are, what drives you, do some work and find that out. Because I think once you uncover that within yourself, now you have more of a compass that can be helpful for navigating a lot of different circumstances.
Okay, so let's talk about external motivation now. And one of those external motivations, we had our sales and marketing summit not too long ago, back in January, and our keynote was Kevin Nolan, the founder of Nolan Transportation Group, and Cassandra Gaines, host of Mad Gaines here on FreightWaves TV, and they were talking about team motivation, and the story comes out of Kevin Nolan had challenged his team to book the quota of loads for the day. If you did that, this quota of loads, if you booked all your loads, you'd get a free pair of Nike Air Force Ones, right? He tells the story, and by 10:30 a.m., everyone had booked their loads, right? And it kind of tells you, once again, that, yeah, this can be done, and it can be done pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stretches that quota up, and he was kind enough to send us a video of those Nike Air Force Ones. So let's roll that right now.
Check my footwork, Kevin and Cassandra. Thought when I came back to Atlanta, I'd have to pull them out. I got these boys too, but these are the NTGs. Pretty solid. Hope y'all are doing well.
So yeah, so he sent that over to us, right? Those NTG custom Nike Air Force Ones, but and he detailed in that fireside chat or that keynote that it's not just about getting those, right? It's being left out. No one wants to be left out. Mm-hmm. When that custom order came in, no one on that floor wanted to be the one without those Air Force Ones.
Yeah, and I think that's a great, in my mind, way for that short-term motivation to really ramp something up in the near term, right? And so I think that there's short-term and long-term motivating factors, and I think about it in terms of grilling a steak, right? Is what I come down to, and you have different ways of sourcing heat, mm-hmm. right? You have your lighter fluid and your charcoal. And a lot of these, and the way my mind thinks is your money and fear can be that lighter fluid types of short-term motivators. They can get that fire really bright and really hot, really fast. But if you don't have those charcoals underneath to hold and burn that heat over a long period of time, then you're constantly just having to dump lighter fluid to keep that fire going. If you cook a steak with lighter fluid only, it's funky.
It tastes like lighter fluid.
It tastes like lighter fluid. Yeah, it doesn't taste good at the end. You want to have both. You need the short term, and then you need the coals underneath to give that long burn.
And that short term, the short term motivations, if it's fear and greed all the time, that's when you see people do things they shouldn't be doing, taking shortcuts. Sometimes criminal activity. Conning people, strong arm cells, right? It's all that short term. If you build with the charcoals, right? Put the charcoals underneath, build that for the long term, you start doing the right thing, which is really increasing value. And if you're really doing good things for people and you're out selling, doing good things for people, that's a really, number one, it's great satisfaction. Mm-hmm. It's a great purpose. But that's the long haul. And money kind of just floats away, right? It's not really a consideration.
What becomes viewed as fuel and not mm-hmm. the end game, right? Money is the thing that's fueling you to be able to do the just cause or the purpose of mm-hmm. your business or activity or lifestyle or what your internal goals are. That is the thing that gets things done. It's fuel to the car that gets you along the way on the journey. Mm-hmm. But hoarding fuel, or if your whole purpose of vacation is to buy a lot of gas at the gas station, then you're missing everything about vacation that makes it great. And so, I mean, it's, when you're talking about doing things wrong, throw the steak in the microwave because we can't get this thing going. Right? That's
right.
the wrong way to cook a steak.
And then not only goes for salespeople, it goes for organizations too.
Right.
You see some businesses who just need to make their quarter, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of financial crimes breed off of having to make a certain arbitrary number.
How much of those stressors that businesses and people face are internal stressors and not even external? Are we just making things harder for ourselves because we've painted quota numbers and we pulled them out of thin air that are actually unrealistic and not based on reality or something of the like? And now we feel all this pressure that we've created ourselves.
Exactly right. And that's to customers or is to investors, right?
Right.
Beating the street. A lot of companies, the downfall has been trying to beat that street every 90 days. And so they do short-term plans to hit that number with the detriment to the long-term sustainability of the business.
Yep.
So,
yep.
So Inc. article, this is kind of what we're talking about, 14 highly effective ways to motivate employees. Give me your top 3 out of the 14 and kind of why.
My top 3, purpose, because I think if you know the purpose of the company and what they're trying to do and why they exist and what their cause is, what they're trying to do for the world and the industry and the pain they're trying to alleviate, if you deeply understand that, then I think you can get on board, or somebody like me at least can get on board with, okay, I know what we're tasked to do and the implications. And that leads straight into the second, big picture. If I'm aware of what the big picture is, it's much easier for me to drill down into the small day-to-day things that need to happen for that big picture to become a reality. And then I think the last one, for me at least, is to let other people lead. I think that if you are providing, you have to understand as a manager that there's probably people that you're leading that are going to be really smart and have really good viewpoints. And if you can crowdsource that and allow people to feel like they are also leading at times, you have that in the team, you're creating an environment to bring everyone's best attributes to the surface. And when you do that, you're elevating the performance of your team as a whole.
Yeah, when you let people lead, it kind of builds their purpose, right? Because no one's purpose is really to follow.
Yep.
Their inner purpose that they really want to do, I think everybody wants to lead. And if you don't ever put anybody in a position to lead, they won't, and over time, they'll probably be dissatisfied. Another great point about letting other people lead is it softens your day, actually.
Yeah.
It really does. It allows you as a manager to think about other things, more important things, than trying to micromanage everything, which is never good.
And you get a glimpse into what people are capable of. And I think you might be surprised. I think there'll be some times you're like, oh man, that was good.
Yeah, I know, right? And you let people lead. I'll go to my top 3, and that was my third. No real order on those, but radiate positivity, right? No one likes negative people. No one likes negative thoughts. Even if if you're on the, I read the headline this morning. I can't think of the name of the ship, but the one with all the Audis and BMWs and Ferraris that is on fire right now. Even if the ship is on fire, you acknowledge it's on fire, but you remain positive, right? We'll get to shore.
Yeah.
We're going to sit here in this inferno for a few more days, but we'll get to shore, and this is how we're going to do it.
We're breathing. We're here.
We'll
breathing. Get through it.
Yes. And then motivate individuals rather than the team. While, it's important to motivate the entire team, motivating if you motivate each individual, everything else is going to work itself out.
Well, each individual has a different why.
Yes.
And as a manager, I think it's critical and important to understand what the prime motivating factor for each individual is, so that when you are going to motivate them, you know what to appeal to and how to reach out to them.
I know. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Yep.
So motivating each individual, making sure that everyone is striving for the same goal is definitely one of the big things. So next week on Put That Coffee Down, we have a special guest, right?
We do.
Who do we have, Richie?
We do. We have Koniak he was at Salesforce. He was one of the top salespeople at Salesforce for a while. Now he is out doing his own thing, coaching and building, putting out lots of great content. If you're not following him already on LinkedIn, I highly suggest it. He puts out great videos and he's sharing a wealth of knowledge on some of the things that he learned along the way that led to his success.
Yeah, we'll learn about his lessons. I imagine we'll talk about motivation as well, because
I believe so.
Is a core principle, definitely. So you can download the podcast version of Put That Coffee Down at Freightcast, or Put That Coffee Down anywhere you download podcasts, and you can catch us here live every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, see you.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war. I've been shutting down the stars.